Now to discuss Democratic Senator Tammy Duckworth of Illinois, who's an Army veteran and a former Black Hawk helicopter pilot who served in Iraq. And Senator, as someone who used to fly Black Hawk helicopters, what are your thoughts on what we know so far about this horrific crash?
Well, I did have a briefing earlier today from the FAA and the NTSB investigators, and I asked some very specific questions about the equipment on board the Black Hawk, where they were on their route of flight, transitioning from Route 1 to Route 4, I believe that helicopter route, and then also where the position of the regional jet was it established, for example, on final approach? I asked them to provide me with some more information, which they will, including the transcripts of the air traffic control instructions back to and forth to the pilots. I wanted to make sure that the pilots had acknowledged air traffic control telling them to watch out for the regional jet, which they said they had. But as someone who flew Black Hawks in these types of mission profiles where you're flying underneath commercial airliners, I flew out of Midway Airport for over a dozen years, where I did routinely fly beneath commercial airliners landing there at Midway Airport. This is not an abnormal flight profile to be in, although it is a very congested airspace in the nation.
What are the biggest challenges in flying a Black Hawk in particular, especially in an area like this where there is so much congestion? Are there blind spots? Most of our viewers have no idea what it's like to even be on a helicopter, much less fly one.
Well, you know what? The blind spot's not going to be in the Black Hawk. The blind spots are going to be in the commercial airliner coming in for a landing, because they just have those cockpit windows and the side windows. But when they're established on that landing, they're looking straight down the runway. And when they get close to landing, they're actually the system that prevents collisions actually pops off, it turns off just as you're about to land. The Black Hawk actually has very good visibility with plexiglass bubble above the pilots' heads, on the sides of the doors of the aircraft, and also underneath the pilot's feet. And you have an additional crew member, the crew chief, sitting in the back, who's also helping you to look. So this particular Black Hawk was under visual flight rules. They had to be providing the separation with the landing aircraft. They were responsible for it. They acknowledged the instructions from air traffic control that they would look out for the aircraft. And at this point, I need to know, from the FAA and from the NTSB investigators, who departed from their route, because that Black Hawk needed to be hugging that eastern riverbank of the Potomac, and the regional jet, of course, was on short final for, I believe, runway 33. And so at some point, they converged on each other and lost that lateral separation. And we need to see who drifted into whose flight path.
What is your reaction to President Trump blaming this accident on diversity, equity, and inclusion hiring practices?
Utter disgust, because it is beneath the office of the President of the United States. Basically, what he's saying by blaming DEI on this is to say that the air crew of that Black Hawk did not earn their place in that cockpit. And let me tell you, our Army aviators, our Army air crews, including the crew chiefs, are some of the best trained pilots and air crew members in the world. They would not be in that cockpit unless they had earned their way there. Shame on Donald Trump. Shame on him to claim to himself to be the commander-in-chief. And the first thing he does isn't to console their family members, their loved ones, but to actually blame the pilots, blame the air crews. We're going to find out what happened, and we're going to make sure that if there's anything that we can do to keep this from happening again, we're going to do that. But in the immediate aftermath of a tragedy where we lost 3 heroes of the United States of America, 3 people who wear the uniform of this great nation, for him to immediately question their right to be in that cockpit as if they did not earn their place is shameful, especially for someone who's supposed to be leading these troops.